As the year drew to a close, the cracks were starting to show. I'm John Renton with the Retro Review World Class Championship Wrestling Christmas Star Wars 1985 at Reunion Arena, same venue as it ever was, that held many Star Wars events. No, I'm not talking about the movies, I'm talking about the world class events like the Independence Day and the Thanksgiving and the Christmas Star Wars and Fritz von Erich's retirement. Wait, that was in Dallas Cowboy Stadium. Okay, so I can't really do a Talking Heads reference, but I can talk about this world-class event where Thanksgiving Star Wars 1985, literally just a month before, maybe even just a few days shy of a month just before, 13,400 some odd people, 7,800 people in Reunion Arena. If you don't know how much Reunion Arena holds, 21,000 people. So yeah, roughly a third of the capacity. That's not good. And I'll tell you this much, checking the future events, especially one that I'm going to be reviewing a little bit later, the 1987 Christmas Star Wars event that was also in Reunion Arena. Oh boy, the crowd was significantly smaller by that point. Now that being said, there was some good talent in World Class. They were doing some good, they were still doing some good stuff, even with the injuries and with, Mike Von Erich having his problems and just a whole lot of stuff. Kerry Von Erich hadn't had his accident yet. That wouldn't happen until later in '86. And unfortunately, Gino Hernandez would pass away through shady circumstances, shall we say, just a couple months after this. World Class was still cooking in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. And they were still, drawing some good crowds in other spot shows if they would, go out even to the East Coast. They would do some good stuff, but it's just amazing how quickly this company fucking imploded. That being said, Mark Lawrence welcoming us, doing the ring introductions. Bill Mercer on the call. So this does come from Classic Wrestling Stuff on YouTube, by the way. I feel the need to plug them. They got some great stuff, some episodic world-class events. I'm just sticking mainly to the holiday-themed ones because I only have so many hours in the day and only so much time in the rest of the year and in subsequent years. But it is nice to check out these big events and see how they, see how fired up the crowd was, how great the matches were, and how Lance Von Erich was a terrible idea. Nothing against the guy, but it was a terrible gimmick idea from Fritz. So John Mantell versus Tommy Montana was cut. Okay, so we don't get to see the man that represented Montana, maybe Butt Montana, for all I know. I don't know anything about Tommy Montana. Could be a lovely individual. Could have been, a guy representing the state of Montana when there's nothing out there. Been to Montana before. There's not a whole lot there. But anyway, the Grappler and the Great Kabuki with Percival Pringle III, the future Paul Bearer, taking on Iceman King Parsons and Brian Adias. And, well, the Grappler had recently beaten Adias for the Texas Heavyweight Championship because Brian Adias had it at the Thanksgiving event. So, obviously, he beat him on the syndicated television shortly after. The crowd was very echoey. Now, they were loud at times because still there was almost 8,000 people there, but in a 21,000-seat arena, they can only make so much noise. Now, lots of rest holds and headlocks and stuff like that. It wasn't bad. There were times where it got a little bit messy. It's like, yes, a lot of this shit was called in the ring, but just a lot of it got where it's like, okay, we're going to do this, and did they have any idea how a tag match worked? And these were 4 professionals. There was a power slam by the Grappler, pretty impressive, and then we get, loaded boot spot. And a roll-up on the Grappler, 1, 2, 3. So obviously, Adias is trying to get back in contention since he was apparently a good friend of the Von Erich. Shout out to, I forget who told me that. That was on one of the retro reviews I did for World Class earlier in the year. Thank you very much for telling me that. That kind of explains why Adias, who wasn't a bad talent, probably shouldn't have cut promos, wasn't a bad talent, but explains why he would get so many shots. And post-match beatdown of the faces. This would be a recurring theme with a lot of these shows. Tatsumi Fujinami, yes, that very same man that faced off against Ric Flair in a series of matches in 1991 over the NWA and WCW Championship for the New Japan Super Show and also at Super Brawl 1. He took on Bob Daughter Toucher Sweet Tan. If you know anything about Bob Sweet Tan, besides him just being a piece of shit, he apparently sexually assaulted his own daughter. So I hope he suffered mightily every single goddamn day of his life until his death. Because that's what everybody fucking deserves. I don't fucking care if you're in wrestling or whatever. You do that to your kids, you deserve to rot from the inside out. Knowing that nobody ever loved you and that you're a vile piece of shit. It was cool to see Fujinami on this show. On a U.S. show in particular, considering that he was still on the rise. Even though he'd been wrestling for a number of years, he was still on the rise by this point, as far as, like, being seen as a tremendous talent. And he was. I mean, hard hitting, really, really good, just stiff, everything in the ring. That really sounded a lot less dirty before I said it, but he could grapple with you. He could do some great, striking. The Japanese commentary team was fired up. This wasn't very long in a back suplex, 1, 2, 3. Again, fuck Cowboy Bob Sweetan. Or Bob Sweetan, whatever the fuck, He could have been a cowboy or whatever. We all know he touched his daughter, and he deserves again to rot. So, hurts so good. Oh, this Lance Von Erich gimmick, it hurt so good, and it killed some business because Fritz Von Erich didn't want to make it feel so good. Okay, that was bad. Lance Von Erich, though, he wasn't a bad talent. He faced off against Rick Rude for the American Heavyweight Championship. And this was what it was. I will say, the one funny thing about these compilations or these Star Wars events put together as well as possible, you can tell they're taken from various broadcasts, because that's what World Class would do. They would tape this, they would syndicate it, and show it over the subsequent few weeks. And they would just show, like, Independence Day Star Wars, or early January Star Wars, whatever it is. They would just show all these events, and it would show them over a few weeks, and then you get the whole thing, but you'd have to watch like fucking 2-3 hours of television just to get that. This is nice and compiled together. And I got a couple AWA Christmas events I'm going to be diving into pretty soon, including one from '87. Oh boy. So, Lance was a good athlete, but this wasn't good. Percy Pringle just kept yelling at ringside, and the ref got poked in the eye, and Percy used his cane, but that caused a DQ, because the ref saw that, and that was it, basically. Lance won, but he didn't win the championship. Gordy and Roberts took on Mark Youngblood and Dave Peterson, who I found out died in a motorcycle crash in 1993. That's terrible. Feel bad for him. There was so much hair in this match. So much hair going on in this match. My God. Maybe he's born with it. Maybe it's just hairballing. So anyway, there was a slam off the top by Gordy. 1, 2, 3. Not much to this match. Jack Victory took on Missing Link. Speaking of not much to it. Diving headbutt. 1, 2, 3. I don't really have much to say about that. Rude and Pringle show up, and then Sunshine is kind of like now the person where it's like, okay, Link, calm down, calm down. Well, excuse me, Sunshine Princess. He also hit Percy with a headbutt. That was actually kind of nice. Dynamic duo, Adams and Gino Hernandez. Gino in one of the last big events. Pretty much the last big event he would be part of. He'd be part of syndicated TV, but will be found dead in his apartment, unfortunately, a couple months after this. Took on the Cosmic Cowboys. Cosmic Harry and Cowboy Kevin. It was the Von Erichs, in case you can get that. They had masks and hats on and everything, and then they just took that off. Because they were like, well, it's pretty obvious. You can tell by the bodies, and you can also tell by the fact, oh yeah, one of them's wrestling barefoot. Not many cowboys would go around barefoot. Bareback? Sure. Moving on. American Tag Team Championship match. I mean, as you kind of would expect, these guys, took it seriously and laid in some good strikes. This was back when Kerry had both feet on the ground. And Gino really was something special. Damn shame. Wonder what would have happened had he lived on. And a melee at the end, and eventually we get a close 2 count, a very close 2, like really close, like what the fuck, over the top. So the Von Erichs win, but they win by DQ. And then Adams is tired of Gino's shit, because we're just going to break up this team all of a sudden. That's when I believe they did the whole thing where Chris Adams got blinded, and that was stupid. So Scott Casey and Sunshine took on John Tatum and Missy Hyatt. Well, it wasn't exactly a technical classic. I don't think you could expect that. But it broke down quickly, the women got into it, and it was a mess. But it wasn't dull, I will say that. Casey basically ends up, it basically covers, and then Missy yells at him after. Missy yells at John Tatum afterwards. How could you get pinned? They didn't know how to use Missy Hyatt after World Class and UWF Mid-South, did they? They had no idea how to use Missy Hyatt. She could be a really good bitch as far as an on-screen character, and WCW didn't want to do that. Dr. Death Steve Williams took on Antonio Inoki. So there's just clips of this, but I will say it was pretty damn special to see a more, just on the rise Dr. Death Steve Williams and Antonio Inoki on a U.S. show. So Antonio Inoki had the Enziguri as his finish and hit the Enziguri 1, 2, 3. Brody versus the One-Man Gang was cut in 1986, F5, almost 86. In 1985, probably not the worst thing in the world, even though both were still, were really, really good. I mean, One Man Gang had a number of years left, and Brody was Brody. Maybe not the worst thing. Kevin, Kerry, and Lance took on the Freebirds. Joined in progress and clipped. Go home, Freebirds. Go home, Freebirds. And Kevin accidentally crossbodies Lance. Doesn't mean to. I love Lance. That's I love Lance. Thumb in the throat. He's like, Gordy doing that and everything. And then we get a miscue with the heels and the most devastating maneuver in all of professional wrestling. The surprise roll up 1, 2, 3. And there you go. That's it. That's it for that show. It was a little bit longer. This was almost, I think it was like an hour and 45 minutes, hence why there was a little bit more analysis, but that was actually pretty good. As far as pacing and everything, not every match was great, but this still had some life to it. Unfortunately, the 1987 event, which again I will be reviewing in just a little bit, less so, even though talents tried. Agree, disagree what I said? Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Retlin. I'll see you soon.